Hi there and welcome to this X8R video demonstrating the install of our new Suzuki Jimny Kingpin suspension rebuild kit. The Suzuki Jimny has a four-wheel drive suspension setup using Kingpins and a swivel joint system. Although a fairly good setup, they are prone to oil leaks. The Kingpins and bearings fail when excessively used off-road. Not only are these faults MOT failures, they are also dangerous if driven when the faults become excessive, known as the death wobble. Each kit contains the parts for one corner. You will receive one swivel seal, two Kingpins, two Kingpin bearings and races, eight Kingpin bolts, two M8 bolts, one circlip for the drive shaft, one drive shaft oil seal, two vacuum hose caps, two male bungs for the vacuum lines, one tube of RTV sealant. You will also receive one 454-gram tub of Maxima waterproof grease. This grease is a high-temperature lithium grease that is extremely sticky. It's perfect for the wet environment of the Jimny swivel hubs. As you can see, this Jimny is leaking some oil and is heavily caked in mud. Spray the bolts with WD-40 to loosen them, and then use a wire brush to strip away any mud and surface rust. Loosen the small bolts on the freewheeling hub with an E10 star hex socket, then jack up or raise the vehicle. We used our ramp, which is recommended, but you can do this with a trolley jack. Undo the wheel nuts using a 12mm socket and remove the wheel. Remove the 12mm bolts from the back of the caliper. Wiggle off the caliper and remove the brake pads. Undo the 17mm bolts on the caliper carrier and slide the carrier off the disc. Remove the brake disc. If the disc is not loose, then thread the two M8 bolts into the locating holes on the disc. This should push the disc far enough away from the hub to make it loose. Unscrew the bolts from the freewheeling hub and pull it off, exposing the end of the drive shaft. Remove the old circlip using circlip pliers, followed by the vacuum plate. Label or colour code the vacuum hoses. We put some tape around the back hose. Pull them off the hub and place the bungs in the vacuum hoses and the caps on the vacuum lines. This will stop any dirt or debris entering the vacuum system. These are the male bungs to put in the vacuum hoses. These are the caps to put on the vacuum lines. Using a 17mm socket, undo the bolt on both steering arms. If it is constantly turning, jack up the base of the steering arm. Use a 12mm socket to remove the Kingpin bolts. The WD-40 from earlier should have helped loosen them. Lift out the Kingpins. We found it easiest to twist the Kingpin to make them loose, then use the back end of a hammer to lift them out. Pull away the swivel joint, which will pull out the drive shaft and the internals of the hub. This is the internals of the hub. It is packed with old grease contaminated with water. The bearings fell out whilst removing the swivel joint, and the bearings had completely split and left shards of the bearing in all of the old grease. Clean the inside of the hub, ensuring that all of the old grease has been removed. Whilst you are cleaning the hub, also remove the rubber drive shaft oil seal. Also, clean the inside of the swivel joint. You can see here all of the shards of the bearing that have ended up in the grease. This is the joint and hub once completely clean. Next step is to remove the races. The best way is to get a 1-inch socket and put it on the end of a socket extension, and then hammer the race out of place. Now fit the new races. Place the race in the hole and place a block of wood on top, then hammer it in. It will still protrude around halfway out of the hub. Do this for the top and bottom. There may be corrosion or an uneven surface on the lip of the swivel joint. Take a wire brush and try to smooth it out as much as possible. You may need to polish it with a wire wheel if it is really uneven. Clean the drive shaft from any old grease. Next, install the new swivel seal, with the larger metal seal going on first. The grooves will point inwards. Then fit the rubber seal. And then the smaller metal seal. Ensure the cutouts of the metal seal are pointing upwards. Fit the new drive shaft oil seal by pushing it into place, and reinstall the drive shaft, lining up the internal splines. Cover the insides of the hub in the Maxima grease which has been supplied in your kit. It is very sticky and unlike most CV greases. Cover the bearings in a light coating of the grease and install by pressing them into the races. You want to do the bottom bearing just before you reinstall the swivel joint, as it will most likely fall out. Cover the inside of the swivel joint with the grease. Refit the swivel joint over the hub. It's helpful to have another set of hands to hold the bottom bearing in place. If the joint does not go over the hub, then the races may need hammering in a bit more. Replace the steering arm nuts and tighten to 43 Nm of torque. Fit the new Kingpins. Firstly, you will need to lightly coat the tip with the grease and then put a small bead of RTV sealant around the base. Place the Kingpin into the top of the hub and hammer it in with a rubber mallet. Do this for the top and bottom Kingpin. We put a light coating of RTV sealant around the outside of the Kingpin as well. Fit the new bolts on the Kingpins and tighten to 25 Nm of torque. Do this for the top and bottom Kingpins. Apply a light coating of the Maxima grease around the rear of the hub. Fit the swivel seals over the top with the small metal seal first, then the rubber seal, then the larger metal seal. Fit the bolts over the top of the seal and tighten them to 10 Nm of torque. Fit the vacuum plate back over the drive shaft and fit the new circlip. To test that the drive shaft is poured all the way out, twist the 12mm bolts from the calipers into the end of the drive shaft and pull it out. Then tighten the vacuum plate and circlip until it fits onto the groove. Remove the caps and bungs from the vacuum hoses and lines and refit the hoses. Pop the brake disc back on the vehicle and refit the freewheeling hub. Loosely fit the star hex bolts by hand. Refit the caliper carrier and slide in the brake pads. Place the caliper over the top and refit all 4 bolts. The caliper bolts will need tightening to 22 Nm of torque, and the caliper carrier bolts will need tightening to 85 Nm of torque. Tighten the hex bolts with a socket and torque to 48 Nm. Put the wheel back on. Install the wheel nuts and tighten to 95 Nm of torque. And that is the repair complete. All torque settings are from the Suzuki Jimny workshop manual. They may vary depending on the model Jimny you have, so we recommend checking them on the manual for your vehicle. Thank you for watching this X8R video. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact us on the email address or the telephone number on the screen.
Mm-hmm.